Hello, Manuela. Welcome to How Things Connect podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you on the show and so honored. And Manuela, as an introduction for anyone who doesn't know her, she has dedicated her life to exploring the connectivity between humans and within humans in many ways through ritual and healing and actually dance. And her passion, aside from being an incredible, intuitive empath and energetic healer, she is also, in her own words, a midwife of the creative process, as well as a passionate dancer and a passionate advocate for movement for healing. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Stephanie.
So, we were talking about a little earlier what is happening in the context of humanity at this moment. And we both appeared, it was interesting, we both appeared, you're dressed in white, I'm dressed in black, and we're in this polarity, which so reflects exactly what's happening right now outside in our world and in our society, and where the polarity of dark and light and one extreme and the other is so obvious. And I would love to hear from you since you just as sort of a general weather report almost. What have you found, because you work with a lot of clients, you work with a lot of people, what have you found to be the most absorbing concern that people have had?
hmm Well, a beautiful question. And I think currently what I'm sensing and what I'm feeling is that there is a separation happening between our belief system. Regardless of the storyline that is being told, there are tools that have been fed to us in order to separate the psyche and separate our humanity and unity as human beings. And I think one of the biggest um, beliefs is that because of name it vaccine, name it presidential campaign, name it what it is, we are meeting at a threshold of decision making and belief system where we are being separated based on what we think is right or wrong, or what we think is true or false. The polarity of belief system that is happening right now in the world is, to me, actually is fascinating because
Mm-hmm.
it brings forth a material and to transform, to bring up to surface in order to actually recreate the history, recreate dialogue, recreate the story that has been fed to us for so long.
So are you saying that the conflict is more sort of symptomatic? Well, certainly symptomatic of all the internal sort of our internal beliefs and our own sort of conflicts within ourselves. But are you saying also that then what we're witnessing is, in a way, a natural part of evolution, right? Because until we can evolve, we have to meet ourselves where we are in authenticity. And in that authenticity is truth. And in that truth, it is not always pretty. And,
Absolutely.
we're facing all our prejudices, all of our biases, all of our, fears, doubt, hate, shame, guilt as well. And that's never a pleasant sight and never an easy thing to go through. However, it is also necessary, and in the language of healing crisis and healing crises, in order to heal from any disease, you have to outpicture, you have to go through that process. And that process has to externalize the symptoms that have been long brewing. Um, you, I know, have studied and you've immersed yourself in many years of study and apprenticeships in 44 countries. You've studied so many different disciplines and modalities and practiced them as well, including shamanic studies, shamanism, intuitive touch, psychic ability training, of course, which you already naturally gifted in, crystal healing, aromatherapy, and Reiki and craniosacral sacral therapy as well. And I'm wondering, from an indigenous point of view, and from the ancient people's points of view, um, what is their perspective of what is happening right now?
Well, it's from different perspectives. I've asked this question to many of my mentors and my teachers. And I know, for example, one of them holds the idea that we're moving into a place where human beings shouldn't be, we're being brought this technology in order for us not to have to work to the extent that we're working, so that man is no longer the machine, but the machine takes over its own role. Now, I have other mentors and teachers that have thought about the idea of like, well, we're being disconnected from the heart of the earth, of the planet, which is nature, right? So the more that we see the kids on computers and technology and iPads, and their minds are becoming, my father used to say, squared, right? So the more that we're disconnecting from our hands and soil, our heart with the earth, our body in our innate right of being immersed in the earth. So I think that even in the indigenous and in the native way, we're seeing a polarity of belief systems. And I think that it's becoming more of a right of individualization and understanding in their own, the person that was saying about technology and the machine taking over the humans, that he's a man that lives in the Amazon, right? So but he has been taken away from the Amazon. So he is now in Western society. And so it's seeing how we have come far from that source, that first man in nature, hunting, gathering the resources, and we're coming far from, and now you see children in their iPads and in technology. So and then the mentor that says, well, we've come far from nature is immersed in very little technology, farming their own food, so it's even a polarity in how we're deciding to live in our lifestyle. I think that's really where I see the difference in the discussion and the belief system as well.
And you mentioned something really important, because we talk about, we all know what we're going through. We know the challenges, we face them every day, especially during these times. And yet, what is the solution, right? And certainly from personal experience, it's always come down to get grounded again in nature, put your feet in the soil, go outside. When you're in a city, it's much harder. Hence, you've also seen this whole movement of people leaving cities now, favoring, for multitude of reasons, of different reasons, to build resilience as well, but to be really more in places where they can have where they're growing on their own food, where they actually have direct contact with nature, with trees, with plants, with gardening, and and in a way be able to also interact differently with their neighbors, right? Because suddenly it's like, okay, you're out in the countryside, and you do have, who your neighbors are. It's unlike, I, for example, have, right now I'm in an apartment building, and I have hundreds of neighbors, and I barely know one or two of them, and they live so close by. So this disconnection and this separation from our wholeness really extends from how we live, our external environment, all the way, I think, to ourselves. And again, one is reflective of the other. When I say to ourselves, I mean internally, how often we are disconnected with the different aspects of ourselves, be it our health, how we feel, our emotions, our heart, and our own spirituality. I was speaking to a teacher yesterday, actually, who's amazing. And, we talk about stress these days a lot: physical stress because of health concerns, mental stress, emotional stress, psychological stress. There is also spiritual stress. And what I mean by that is that if, let's say, all the other aspects of our lives were going really great, it's easier to not pay attention to the aspect of, because we can keep going. Oh, everything's fine. We just keep going our way. But there is such a, the spiritual stress comes from having a void of not truly feeling one's purpose, right? Now, when all the other aspects are taken away, your health is taken away, your livelihood's taken away, suddenly the stability, the material stability that you have in your identity in the external world starts to crumble a little bit, you know, this comes up even more. And I feel that, you know, I mean, good or bad, that's actually coming up for a lot of people to confront, is this spiritual vacuum almost, if one has not done the work or has not really found one's purpose. And in a way, it's very positive because it's actually calling us to ask us, well, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I would love to hear from you. I don't know if you agree with that. And I would love to hear from you. What are your suggestions, you know, into tapping into that, into coming into alignment with one's purpose? And how would you suggest to do that?
Wow, there's so much in what you just said that I think is fascinating, and I think it's really important. I would actually even love to just repeat what you just said, because there's so many parts of that. You know, there's many, and this whole year has brought us the word, and even to like study more of the word privilege in some regard. You know, some of us have had the privilege to actually do that self work, and some of us haven't, and some of us have chosen to do it, some of us haven't. And when it comes to self work, though, you know, even in looking deeper into that, for me personally, it doesn't have to look like I need to travel the world and go into myself and study myself. That's how it was shown to me personally. I didn't actually choose that, and I think I have to make that difference, because a lot of people would probably say, well, you had the option and the privilege and the, you know, all these opportunities to do so. I never actually chose it. It was almost like it was placed outside of my door, and it was like, here you go, this is your life's purpose, you have to just follow it. Now, I would really highly also say that I never actually, for me personally, I never said no to an opportunity, right? So when I was shown Catholicism, I was open to going to church and going and listening to whatever the priest had to say and sitting with my neighbors and, you know, being open to the possibility of learning one thing from that. And same with living with a rabbi for 6 months. It was the same thing. To me, learning from a rabbi was just as important as learning from the priest. And, you know, being with people that don't, agnostics that don't believe in any of it. So for me, my real journey has taken me to just really listen to everything that is shown to me, no matter what it is, and to just listen with an open heart. So when you ask me about finding your purpose, a lot of people block themselves to just understanding and just listening and learning from whoever it is that is shown in their path. And for me, it was, I kind of just took a journey into listening and learning from every single person that was shown in my path. And that has taken me to this point here. I often share with people, you know, that I travel to different countries, and it's like I sit in a coffee shop and next to me is the chief of the, you know, the Zulu tribe in South Africa. And they're like, come to my home and have dinner with me. And then that opens up a whole, had I not asked about what they were writing about, that would have never happened. So it's this curiosity of life and curiosity of more than like purpose and vision. And this is how it needs to look. It's like, why am I in this body? What are we really doing here? What am I here to share with you? And how can you help me understand a bit more about life without blocking us and saying like, that's not true, that is lies, that is this and that is that. It's like, well, you know, I have this to share with you, and I know that you have something to share with me. And just recently, a week ago, I don't know if, you know, I shared with you, I watched Beautiful Mind, and the last piece of that movie was like, I am because you are. And that has stuck with me since then. It's like, I am this experience because you are this experience. Your questions are bringing forth what I have to share. So it's again, more of like finding purpose. I would really suggest in becoming curious about our human existence. And, you know, as you very well know, the heart, body, mind, and spirit, like how each play a role, you know, and as you know, how each play a role in that being.
You touch on something so important, which is openness, which is just simply allowing ourselves to step out of what we think we know, because we honestly, we literally do not know what we don't know. We only know, I always get this wrong, but it's, we always, we only know what we know, And then we know what we don't know, but we never know what we don't actually know. It's impossible to gauge that. And
We
the
know
only
what we
way
don't know. We know that what we don't know that we know that we don't know.
right, try unraveling that. But what what you were saying is so true. Is that actually it's that ability to stay open, ability to be open enough to receive that knock on the door, which could come in any fashion, right? It could be the person sitting next to you, and it could come in someone presenting a different idea that maybe you are not so open to, and kind of exploring it. You could always change your mind. You could always not change your mind, because we all have free will to do whatever we want in the end of the day. And that's, by the way, that's fine too. If there are people who don't choose this particular path, that's totally fine too. That's their prerogative. However, in addressing this question for people who wish to, wish to find more alignment with themselves, I think that's a great starting point. And I do want to say, earlier you were talking about the heart. That is really a place you and I always talk about the heart, in how it's not that we're even underdeveloped there, because the heart intelligence is so powerful. It's always there. It's just that we have shut our ears and shut our own sensitivity down in terms of how we listen to our hearts. And for better or worse, we have been a very mind obsessed culture. We have been a very mind focused people, actually all over the world, unless there are very few indigenous tribes left that are so intact. But then whenever we come back to that, that is where a lot of the guidance is. And it's fascinating that in the last many years, like, yoga, meditation has gotten has grown. Those practices have grown in popularity so tremendously. And underlying that, I believe, is like, well, why are you quieting the mind to begin with? You're quieting the mind to listen to the heart. And the heart has its own intelligence. In fact, there are many scientific studies that have actually shown how the heart can perceive in ways the mind cannot. And it always actually precedes the mind's ability to conceive, and or perceive rather. And that is fascinating. And if anyone's interested, you should definitely look at Heart Math Institute, the work there, and then look at, and to look at the work with Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's fascinating stuff. So here we are again. I just want to bring it to on a practical level. We may all know this, or people may be familiar with what we just discussed, but then here we are, super stressed, you and I, both, no matter how much meditating you do, no matter how much work you've done, we are in the world. And how do we meet that? And I wonder, and I wonder where there needs to be also an acceptance, I feel, a surrender to whatever's happening. Because again, it's not about it, not getting too caught up in any negative narrative out there that keeps spiraling you down. At the same time, being open, so you're aware of what's going on while still staying grounded and heart-centered. And how it seems to me that is, and that requires a level of acceptance, right? Like, okay, you know what? I'm stressed today. All these things are going on. I don't want to fight that. At the same time, I don't want to forget where my center is, and that a lot of what's going on outside of us is a distraction. So how do you help your clients and your people come to terms with that?
What comes to me as you're saying all of this, which beautifully said as always, is congruence. It's finding your congruence in the midst of chaos in the middle of the world and asking questions. I think as a humanity, we're told like follow the crowd and go right, and right will take you to the next step, and then you'll find the pot of gold behind the rainbow, you know? And a lot of us, including I think you and I, are part of this group where we're like, well, if we go right, we're going to cross the bridge, and then that bridge might not be too safe. So we are always asking questions. And I think that's very, very important for humanity, to just like get into their own congruence in their body. That's where I would start. And often a lot of my clients come to me to say, like, how do I get in touch with more of my gift? How do I like, you know, I know that I have a gift, but I can't get in touch with it. How? It's like, wait a minute. Take a deep breath, connect to your belly, connect to your heart. Let's all do this right now. Take a deep breath. Releasing it through your jaw. And then one more. And release through your jaw. And out through your mouth. There's no such thing as how. The how is the feeling of the body. It's like, how do I know this is truth? It's because my body's talking to me in like in goosebumps. You know, I'm getting goosebumps in my back. Spirit is talking to me because I'm not focused on why this is happening. I'm focused on my connection to the divine, and that divine for everyone is different. For some is the plants, for some it's the air, for some it's a deity, God, you know, and it's in the breath, in the spirit, that we are able to connect even further. And embodying, you know, you and I do a lot of movement work. It's really the embodiment of spirit in body. Body is the tool for us to access even further that spirit, that divine, that God, right? It's again, not separating us from, you know, body is the way that you and I can touch and our souls can connect even further. I'm sure that without body, we're touching and connecting in a different way. How things connect, you know, perhaps it is by touching our hands, and then we are getting all these images of us in different lifetimes, or in this lifetime, and in just it's how we are connecting to one another. And I really believe that is through the breath. The breath is an amazing tool for us to get in touch even deeper to our heart, to our mind, to our soul. But if we actually like start walking, and we walk from our heart space versus our mind, you know, a lot of us, if you actually notice, you sit down in a park and you notice people walking, a lot of people are walking with their head forward.
It's true. Like,
it's their mind.
I do that sometimes. Yeah, absolutely.
So what would it be?
They're not in their bodies.
We just relax our shoulder and allow our heart to lead.
Yes.
In every moment. It would be a whole different like society way of being.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, Manuela. I love what you said just now about letting go of the how. And understanding that we are always it. We are always, quote unquote, doing it, being it. And to come into presence with that wherever we are. And just to come into that moment, into our body specifically, is, if we can all do that, that's a huge step already. That would be such an improvement, and it would be so powerful for us to just calm our nervous system, and to be able to get out of the fight or flight reaction, and actually be able then to see more solutions, more opportunities, because we've just expanded our ability to perceive, instead of being in the narrow focus of, okay, how do I put this fire out? You know, and it is so challenging often when we are actually faced with that within, you know, whatever is happening in our life. And yet it is so critical, and yet so, you know, you can also say it so simply and put it so simply. And it is true. It's letting go of the how, surrendering to that, coming back into presence in your body, in your breath. And yes. And speaking of body, I know you are an incredible dancer. And how do you relate that to, you know, in terms of connecting to one's to your body and also connected to your soul?
Mm. First, I just want to say, you know, I didn't get this just out of thin air. You know, my mom was a dancer, so I was born into a ballerina's womb. So I was dancing since the womb. And I danced classical ballet until I was 10. So it was a lot about form, shape, and all of this, right? So this is a little bit about mind and heart, right? So ballet is all about shape and like straight lines. And I stopped that classical ballet because my mom didn't want me to go into like that ballet world. And when I was 15, 16, no, actually, 17, I met my first mentor. Her name's Melissa Michaels, and she introduced me to something called the 5 rhythms. And that was a whole like understanding of, wow, okay, how do we go from lines to just allowing the body to just move as it does and as it wants, you know? And the 5 rhythms is all a form which I encourage all who are listening to check it out. Gabrielle Roth and Melissa Michaels is Golden Bridge, and she just started this thing, Golden Girls Global. So it's understanding, you know, the body in shapeless form, and you go through the rhythms of life, and you go through, you know, the chaos and the stress, and then you also go to the softness and the lyrical and this, you know. So, you know, the body and its shapelessness and its effortlessness of, to me, the dance is a practice of right? Transcendence. So if you actually, this is why for me it's one of the strongest tools personally, and my belief system is that we all have a different way to connect. Some people can connect through writing, some people connect through dance, some people who connect with painting, singing, music. For me, dance is a way where I can stop thinking and I can actually leave my body. You know, the Sufi?
Yes.
I swear, I think one of my last lives was Sufi because I was born twirling. And so the minute that I twirl, my mind starts leaving my body, and it's my body continues twirling, but I'm able to actually access higher levels of consciousness through it. So when I'm dancing formlessness, like without form and effortlessly, I'm able to actually access these stages of transcendence. And then through transcendence, I access transformation. So it becomes this movement of allowing the body to do what it does, but my spirit leaving the body and connecting to like air, to water, to even, you know, whatever it is. And that's how I actually can connect through vision as well. I get a lot of visions through that. So art and creativity are some of the strongest tools for us to connect to our ability to channel God, or again, God is such a loaded word, whatever that means to you, nature, art, you know, all of it. So I think that if we can find our ways to connect to our own heart, we can find ways to connect to that spirit of the earth, spirit of the planet.
Absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, wow. And, you know, you were talking about getting out of the thinking, right? Getting out of our heads and really connecting. And you described so beautifully, you know, that's how you do it with dance. What are some of the other ways? Like, I mean, for example, one of the things I do automatic writing. And, you know, I'll start actually inquiring, or I'll start journaling about how I feel, whatever, but then suddenly it just kind of takes over. And what are some other ways that you have advised clients? Movement is certainly a big one. What if they don't want to move? What if they prefer to do something else? What have you advised?
I usually find that the resistance is our best friend. If we're resisting something, it's because we're actually really
good point.
Like, you don't want to dance. I'm gonna make you dance even more, a little bit more. I usually take the client into a bit of a meditation to just see where they were when they were 5 to 10 years old. It usually is in that beginning stage of our life that we know what it is that we come here to do, right? So when I was little, I was dancing and writing. And I know that because that's what I was doing when I was little, those are my tools. Now, I believe that we all have the capacity to do all of them. All of them. We can connect to writing and so forth. But some of us have a stronger connection to one. And as I said, that resistance usually is telling us which one. But I understand if you don't want to dance. So, you know, I usually often, when I tune into somebody, I can sense what that creative, and that's why that midwife of the creative process actually came from a client. It was
Okay.
and then it stuck, and I stayed with it. I loved it, and I was like, yes,
That's great.
because I can tune into somebody's like, oh, you painted between the age of 3 and 6, and they're like, no, I didn't. I was like, ask your mom. And then they come back and they're like, you're right. I was like, well, then grab a paintbrush and paint outside the lines, grab your hands, paint all over the canvas, let yourself be free in your creative process. So let yourself be free in that writing. Don't don't block it. Don't square it. You know, that's why I say, like,
Don't
ballet,
censor it.
don't censor it. Ballet is a straight line. How can you move from ballet into like free form dancing? And so many people think, oh, but dancing is this way and it has to be done this way, so therefore I can't dance. Same with writing, same with painting.
Absolutely.
So usually people that say, but I can't paint, I'm like, oh really? Grab a bucket of paint, put your hand in the paint, and then just let your hand flow with the canvas. And they're like, really? Ew. And I'm like, no, it's the most,
it's so fun.
Yeah, exactly. Ew is the resistance.
Yeah.
And they come back and they're glowing. They're like, wow, I had forgotten. My parents told me never to get dirty. So I like was, you know, holding on to this, you know, so it's just fascinating. And our heart, our language of the heart is creativity. We connect
Beautiful.
in a creative ways. There is no
Yes.
human being that I know that doesn't have a creative purpose.
Thank you. That is very, very beautifully said. And I love how you actually call out people's resistance, because that is actually huge. I love that. You know, the resistance is the biggest signpost to where our biggest discoveries lie. And it's so true. And going towards our resistance is actually a way towards liberation.
Absolutely.
Even if kicking and screaming. I can attest to that. Yes, absolutely. And so we were talking about resistance. What about fear? Fear to me is so much part of the same issue. And, you know, we're dealing right now with so much fear in the world and so much resistance as well in different ways. How do you meet fear?
Right.
And how do you help others meet fear in their lives?
Fear is real. I'm not going to say fear isn't real. I actually believe that there are two energies in the world. There is fear and there's love. And where we choose to be on that spectrum is our own individual choice. I will never tell people to step away from fear into love if they don't actually are feeling it. And we're being fed, you know, it's fascinating to me to see all the media being the source of fear. Often I wonder if the newspapers and news channels were actually like reporting on positive news, what would happen to the world? Like what would actually happen to the world, right? We would be like, wow, did you hear that this and that happened? And like we would be like in this joyful, loving energy. But often when we read the newspaper, it's like, oh my gosh, the, you know, blah, 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 whatever. So
right. It's always about some accident, people dying, bombs, death, murder, versus like, oh, guess what? This young teenager in Uganda discovered a way to actually eliminate and clean up oil spills in the ocean. Like it could be something like that. And then that only gets relegated to particular
And it
publications and you never
ripples.
see it. Right.
It ripples. We, the humanity is a spiral of consciousness. Like if I'm in a bad mood, you're going to be in a bad mood, and our
Absolutely.
neighbor is going to be in a bad mood. We are so connected by like milliseconds of energy that we're rippling our energy across all. Your whole building is going to feel when you're in a bad mood, and you're going to feel your neighbor's bad mood. So it's a connection of, and we're also sovereign beings and can say no, I don't want to feel that, but that's the reality. So if we have one newspaper that everybody's reading around the world, it's like, okay, well, that's the news that is going to spread, and that's been seeping into social media, and now social media has become the new newspaper because nobody's reporting on positive news other than like your own personal news. So now everybody's reporting on the same fear base. So that's an energy, and you choose to be in that energy. I was, often I find myself living in situations where there's so much fear in the space that I'm in. And then I contract completely because it's not my energy. It's the whole household just like, oh, now I'm not going to bypass that. That's what they decide and that's what they're choosing. But I, as a sovereign being, get to choose that that's not the energy that actually serves me, because I have to be of service to so many people. So if I'm contracted, I'm going to pass that on to the people around me. So by choosing love, by choosing connection to heart, by choosing to lower my mask and smile at the stranger that's on the opposite side of the street, I'm choosing to pass on love, warmth. Again, let's go back to my hand example, right? If you and I were to, like, even just doing it right now, putting our hands together, even through the screen, we are transmitting some sort of energy at this moment. Now, I'm choosing to pass on love and warmth. But who is, I can never say his name, but the water molecule guy.
Oh, Dr. Emoto.
Emoto.
Yeah.
He's done it. We're water. It's all
Yes.
it's all a frequency. It's all a frequency, and it's a choice. And sometimes we can be lost in the herd of sheep, and we can choose not to be love, and then we can choose to be love. So it's our choice.
You said something earlier, at some point you often have to make that choice to remove yourself from a particular space so that you don't get overwhelmed in that energy. And it's having said that, sometimes it can still be obviously really, really challenging, but I completely agree with you in terms of understanding that the fear construct is there really to generate more fear. And where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is in those moments of fear. Can you still stay in a place where you are grounded with equanimity, which is evenness of mind? And I feel that what's so necessary right now, because there is so much polarization, and it doesn't mean everybody has to, like, it doesn't mean, oh my God, you cannot have your differences, but it's also being able to perceive both and not get pulled into imbalance by either side. And that really is the kung fu, right? That really is the work for us to continue to connect to ourselves, our hearts, stay grounded, be present, and then move on day to day. Since you are the midwife of the creative process.
Not the, I think there's many, but I'm one of them.
Since you are a midwife of the creative process, what do you feel is being midwifed at this moment with humanity? What is being birthed? What is this that's coming forward for all of us?
I'm going to just trace this back really quickly before I go forward. But I often say that when we're living in fear, we're living in anxiety, and anxiety is a byproduct of fear. And usually anxiety is living in the future. So we're living in a moment that is not present.
Yes.
I'm going to trace this back. I'm not saying that we need to bypass everything that's happening, because that's just not the reality of how I live. I'm not going to say it's love and all love and we're all one. I'm not that kind of person. I'm very much in the reality of everything. But I would say, let's go back to the present moment and really live. I don't have enough money to live right now, or I have too much money to live right now today. How can I support another person? So it's really living in the today. Otherwise, we're really bringing forth this energy that's not even present yet. So I did have to say that for our last point. And as for the midwife
Yes.
of creativity, wait, would you remind me what that was?
We were talking about, since you are a midwife of the creative process, what is being midwifed now? What is birthing now?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, for humanity.
As we, and this is my opinion, right? In my opinion, always before moving forward, we have to come back and restructure and recreate and crumble what's not working. So we're at a moment in time where we're coming back to remember, to see what hasn't been working up to this point in order to catapult into a brighter future. Usually that process is painful. That's a story also. It doesn't have to be painful, but usually that is like making us look at everything that we've ignored for so long. And it's like, yeah, but you ignored it, you know? So clearing that energy that's no longer serving, which usually can be painful for some, doesn't have to be. We can look at it in a positive way, clearing it, and then like from that building a foundation that actually serves humanity in the most positive way. Now, the way that we look at the story right now can be, this is chaos, this is absurd, this is awful, this is all the words that you want to name it. Or you can look at it as like, this was meant to happen in order for us to build what we're actually here to build. I'm often telling everybody I come across with is like, we chose to come back into this moment, to live this moment right now. This is our time. We didn't have to come back, or maybe we did. Maybe we had, you know, some sort of contract with this time, and we're here building it. So how are we going to face this moment? How are we going to face humanity in this time and help the threshold of the birth of the new paradigm, the new world, the new beginning, the new ending, whatever you want to name it? We're in a massive transformation right now. And
that we are. Yes, absolutely.
it's so beautiful to witness, regardless of the quote unquote chaos that's happening. Of course, a lot of suffering is happening because it's, you know, but it's beautiful. And, you know, I hope that we are alive to see what happens on the other side of it.
I feel that this is you bring up such an important point, is that I love talking about this side of things, is that, again, where do we put our focus, right? You talked about, it's like an arrow, you have to pull it back before it gets launched. And we are absolutely in that point, at that, in this inflection point at the moment. It's what historians, writers, authors have called the fourth turning. It's when establishment and established structures start to fall, to make way for the new. And, you know, what I've been sensing, and, you know, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, is this idea of a new paradigm. What is that new paradigm? And I feel perhaps we are discovering every moment as we are being present and being shown in the today. You know, it could be every decision we make, every conversation we have, and kind of going, you know, something that felt right 2 months ago, even 2 weeks ago, even, is just not quite working anymore. You know, I find myself not being able to use the same words anymore. Even language is coming up, it's really coming up short to describe certain things. It's like, no, I have to come up with a new name because it's so burdened. The old, you know, whether it's, I'm not saying this, but there are many terms like in spirituality, in feminism and all of that. It's like, wait a minute, that's a little old. It's a little old right now. We have to kind of reinvigorate it somehow, into this new paradigm, which I believe is so much more about collaboration. We talked about that a lot. The feminine and activating the feminine, and whether it doesn't matter which gender, and how you identify yourself. It's about the yinness in us. It's about that receptivity. It's about the ability to be present. It's the ability to hold space and to really come back into ourselves instead of always being externalized in a way that repeats old patterns. And collaboration is a big part of it. I think you and I have been very dismayed many times in the past when, we try to collaborate. It's okay, we're trying to collaborate with this person, that organization, and somebody gets screwed, in the process. And I'm not saying that won't happen again, but that there has to be, I think there had to be fundamentally a shift in planetary energy in our cultures, in the history and the moment in time that we had to be in, which is now, for that to actually really shift. Because until you realize, listen, if you don't collaborate and if we don't cooperate, our species will go extinct. The planet doesn't need us, we need the planet.
It's the heart,
right? And so there's that aspect where there is a point of awakening that starts to has been happening throughout, but really has been happening at a much more accelerated rate currently, right? And how we collaborate is going to be interesting.
Yes.
And exciting. Go ahead, please.
And I take it back to where we started, right? Imagine a community coming together to plant our garden rather than one person planting the food that we're going to have in our plate that night. Yes. It's like, imagine us coming back together into community to actually birth and transcend. Like I often mention, if we all were living in our gift, what a different world that would be, if the person packing the groceries at the grocery store actually knew how incredibly sensitive they are, and they can, shift time and space. And imagine us coming back together into community to highlight our gifts. And also I've sensed that part of the new paradigm is actually communicating through the mind. And I think that's partly why their words aren't there anymore. It's like you and I can.
You mean telepathy? You mean
telepathy? Yes. Yeah. You and I can communicate through telepathy. Like I think of you and then you call me. It's this kind of new idea of communicating, and again coming back into that communal garden, into tending our earth, into tending our feet, into tending each other. And I think that's one of my biggest messages to humanity is like, no matter if there's a virus or not, no matter if whatever you believe in, let us ask questions also around like our masks, our like let us smile to the neighbor, let us not forget to say hello. One of the biggest culture clashes that I always have when I'm traveling is like, I travel to Colombia and even the strangest of persons just waves and says hello and stops on the street, and it's like, how are you? And it's like, I don't even know.
Totally.
I will never talk to you again, but thank you for stopping and saying hello. I come back here and like, that's like my biggest culture clash. So let us remember that our medicine is the heart, and our medicine is the connection we have towards each other. And our medicine is our creativity and our gift. And in knowing that, we can come back again into that idea of tending to our garden together as community, as a planet, as a whole.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So what is your favorite way to connect?
Ooh.
With yourself and with others?
Movement. Dance, definitely. I speak in body language. Like the body is my way to connect. I think that's the smile and the eyes. I love looking at somebody's eyes. It's like that speaks to my soul. And then I feel like I can sense somebody's soul through that as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Manuela. And how can people find you? What's the best way?
Thank you, Steph. Thank you so much. My website is manuelawelton.com, and Instagram is also Manuela Welton. And I have sessions available. And if people want to learn more, I am here available for, supporting the process and transformation. That's what I'm here for.
Amazing. And I will put that information, of course, in the notes as well. So thank you again, Manuela.
Thank you. Thank you. Such amazing being here. Thank you.